So here we are on the Conquerors Alexander the Great. Following up what's happening, Alexander is still besieging Babylon, but otherwise the Persian area is all pretty much conquered. Antipater is moving down to start fighting along the coastal regions to make his way down, clear the opening for Egypt. And finally our last guy, who is this? Armenian. He's been sitting there for a while. He wants to move up to cope with the revolt, but that's about it. So I just wanted to jump in because this is the beginning of a Persian turn, and they played the satrap insubordination card. They chose option D, the Harpalus incident. Now, this is actually the card that I was complaining about earlier, because it's got all these things listed and you got no idea what they are, and you can only find out by looking in the rules. But this seems to be a singular card. Nothing else that I've seen yet is as annoying as this. Some of them you may want to look something up to understand exactly what it means. But this is the only one where you have no idea what you got, and you got to look at the rules and figure out just what it can do. You know it's kind of potent. So the Bagoas card, and I guess he was some dude. I don't know enough about the history, and there isn't a lot of historical information in this one. They spend it all rambling through rules in an uncoordinated fashion. Really the problem has to do with poor indexing more than anything, and I think that's really a GMT issue rather than aiming at specific games. They can't hold a certain complexity well. Anyway, the way this card works is it actually just cancels this one out, but you have to roll a die, and in this case I got the Magic 6, so that card is no longer in the game. It's a card that either side can use, so it's not clear, that that's particularly bad for Alexander, although of course it is, because something like this is of almost no use against the Persians at this point in the game. The game is almost... there's nothing for the Persians to do. I mean, I slid my navy up to try to slow them down here, but that means that a deep sea attack against Alexandria is possible, so I don't know. So Alexander's deciding to bypass Tyre. He's leaving Antipater in charge of dealing with that. But going through Nabatea seems so much easier. Historically, Tyre, I don't remember what it was, 3-5 years the siege took. It used to be, at the time of the siege, it was an island, and Alexander built a causeway out to it, and now it's actually connected to land because that was such a massive undertaking that, I mean, the effects of a battle affecting geography that much for that long is humongous. I mean, obviously, you got Grant doing the redirection of the river as well. I don't know if that ever got reversed. But anyway, it's almost over. Alexander's married the royal family into the royal family. I think he counts as great king now. We've cleared the issue up here. All that's really left are the Egyptian actions, and there's almost nothing to do there. There's a garrison, building Alexandria, declaring himself a god, and I think he has to go, I don't remember what else he has to do. He has one thing that's going to increase the weariness, when he goes to Sewa, but it may be something else. Anyway, he's got a few actions he's got to take when he gets to Egypt, but there's really nothing to stop him. And once he has a treasure city there, he'll be in much better shape. He left the Persian treasure behind, which left him out of, no communications going through here, but who cares? There's nothing to worry about, really. He might suffer attrition, but he's got a lot of troops. So we're on a Persian turn, and it's actually a Persian turn between two drawn Macedonian turns. The Macedonians had gone twice, drew a third time. That means the Persians get a free trump, as it were. They've played set up insubordination again as the Harpalus incident. I'm not sure it's the best option in general. The dissension in the eastern holdings could do things as well, but in this particular case, this is the most likely thing to stop them. Why? Well, it removed their control over here in Susa, but that's actually not important anymore. He's already declared himself great king. It's important because it started a revolt in Greece, and he's got to put that revolt down in order to win. So, yeah, I mean, as you go on, the chances of actually affecting play get lower and lower. And with the wound level what it is, the amount of reserve troops in case there's mutinies or whatever, it is so over. I really don't know how the Persians are supposed to stop the Macedonians, but I suspect it is possible. I don't think... The game strikes me that it's been play tested and designed enough that they found that, and that it's kind of a puzzle on how to stop. But I doubt that I'll be playing it enough times to really discover that. It might be interesting though. I mean, so sometimes I play against people who play very, very few games, and it would be kind of fun to play the Persians against against a very, very new player. First of all, yeah, well, I'll get to that in the review. You know, one of the advantages of that is giving an overwhelming position to someone who's not used to flying, in terms of just so much power and force, teaches them a little bit about how they have to conserve that. And I find that actually a really nice step in moving forward in games. So this is a game that I would use as kind of a teaching tool more than anything right now. So I just had a mutiny. Got to see what that did. And basically my decision there was, okay, I don't see what the Persians can do with their turn. They got an action. How about I call it an administrative action? Try to force those because we had the mutiny level high enough. Let's see if we can cause anything to happen. Well, that didn't work. And what happened was you roll a die. That's how many strength points that Alexander loses. He lost 1. He chose to take it from himself because his army is oversized for the task that it's taken care of, which is really just wandering around Egypt at this point. We have that revolt in Greece. All that I have to do to quell that is bring this dude over. He has enough forces that he can quell it. The Persians are holding this card in their hand. Allows another revolt in Greece and another and an army to deal with, but not a very big one. 5 strength points. That would get handled very quickly. Basically, there is nothing that I can see that is going to stop Alexander at this point in the game. Now, a mutiny, if the Persians had more than one treasure city left, would actually do something. It has a chance of Alexander's army just giving up at that point. But that's not going to happen here. And I just do not see any answer. I mean, I can think of some possible ways that this could get dragged out, but I don't want to play them. So I'm going to call this now and do a final wrap on the components and some of my thoughts about it. But I'm just going to push this aside because I think it's going to take me another hour to push through. Just, you know, because of the way that I wander from thing to thing when I'm playing a game. To get to that ending, and I just don't see any value to it, to me. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. Get you out of my crotch if that's where you are. key points I think within the game, within the session. Conquerors Alexander the Great. What to say about it? It's a light game. There's no question about that, and that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Now, GMT gives it a medium rating for complexity and a high solitaire suitability. One of the things I noticed when I played it is it feels kind of like the solitaire games feel to me. I don't know if it really is high solitaire suitability though, because you've got these secret cards that both sides have, and there's some interactive play on them. It's almost to me as if the game has taken the bad part of being a solitaire game, which is only one person gets to really do anything, and made it into a two-player game that's harder to play solitaire, because there are still decisions. Here's what's weird. If it's a solitaire game, Alexander has a really easy time, and that's even kind of explained in the rules, but there's not a whole lot that that the Persians can do. I think they're the more interesting side to play, and like I said just a little earlier, if I was going to play this again, and I probably will, but it would really be using it as a training tool to show somebody, not so much specifics, because the game is very different in terms of the particular tactics and the particular things you can do in it, only having 3 stacks on the board that can move, stuff like that. But to develop the reasoning in gaming in general, I play a lot of times with people who really aren't gamers at all. And, well, if I play with people, it's sometimes it's going to probably be with somebody who is not a gamer and may gain something from being in that overwhelmingly powerful position, trying to figure out what to do, how to take care of the situation. On the other hand, it also gives me something of a challenge to play somebody who maybe is going to make a lot of mistakes, so that I have a better chance of learning what the hell it might be that works for the Persians, because I have no idea. I wrote a few notes down on this. A couple of things. Components. Great. I mean, this is GMT. They put out good components on everything. Map is pretty. Only thing that I have a little gripe about, some of these, not the treasury, there's weather markers, droughts, bad weather. They're really easy to lose on the map, in the sense that you put them down and then you don't remember that they're supposed to have an effect, because they're so tiny. And they just kind of blend in for me. The cards. I don't like the way they look in terms of the writing on them. I find that kind of hard to cope with compared to some of the other cards. But one thing I can say that's great is that they're easy to shuffle. I think that's as long as you don't get a deluxe edition, you get a nice, easier to shuffle set of cards. It probably has a lower lifespan. Most people who play probably use card condoms or something. I won't do that. I'd rather have my cards end up marked up or whatever. I keep consistently feeling, and Geronimo was like this, that Berg is always trying to chase that CDG magic, whatever it is that propels that, it makes everybody love it, with his own design that's similar to, in some ways, using some of the same mechanisms. In this case, he's combining the events cards where you don't have to play them, but you do have to keep recycling them. That feels kind of like the old War of the Ring game. Except that they don't get placed face down with chances to redraw. Along with the chip pull to determine who goes, it's just and the point to point, it's combining all these kind of design elements, mechanics that kind of new. And in this case, I think they actually work pretty well for simulating the situation. Unfortunately, the situation isn't one that maybe is worth simulating. That's a shame, because there's nothing more interesting than, the life of Alexander the Great and how quickly he conquered everything. But, there were reasons. You want the game to be historical, but it's a blowout. And I think there's been a strong attempt to make a playable game out of it, in terms of trying to make some kind of possible balance. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's much fun to play, especially the Persians, once you have nothing. But yeah, I mean, the Persians were reduced to a position where, I'm going to just keep drawing cards and see if I can come up with anything that can, stop you somehow. I think it's very easy for Alexander to avoid getting wounded, and that's, unless I'm totally misreading the rules and sieges count. And as long as that's the case, you can't stop him. I mean, the mutinies just are not effective enough. Well, unless you can force mutinies earlier. And that's kind of the thing. Could I have forced more combat on the Macedonians? I don't know how. That's about the one answer I have. Okay, what else do we have here? Yeah, solo. I've mentioned this before. When I step away from the game, I have to come back, and it's hard to remember what's going on. For me, that's important soloing. But if you just wanted to sit down and play something straight through, this wouldn't be that bad. It may be a little long. It is definitely a little long for my taste to do that, especially for the level of excitement and what I get out of it. Then in some of the cards, you do see glimpses, and this kind of pleases me, of the designer's sense of wit. I always like when he's kind of let loose, because he puts things very well. It's really kind of annoying when you see his style being cramped too much. Alright, so that's about it. This is not something I would recommend to anyone to pick up particularly. The problem is that there's nothing else on this particular this campaign, this scope. I don't know of anything, and this actually does a pretty good job, I think, of doing a historical representation of it, and goes as far as you can towards trying to make that fun, I think. I just don't think there was much that could have been done with this one, and it's a shame, because this is kind of the lead-off to what was supposed to be a series. But I'm not sure how much other games could have taken this same mechanism and used it as well, because the mechanism is really designed for this kind of sweeping across all at once, and an opponent who can't do much. So there might be certain Roman campaigns you could do that with. I'm not really familiar enough with the Far East to say, but it's kind of a pleasure to have something of this nature. I just wish that it was a good game as well.